Oh, it's 1 o'clock. Okay.
Yep, it's 1 o'clock. So
Yes, that's
Melinda's going to lead us today. So go for it,
nice.
Melinda. You are in charge. I'll be here if you need me.
Okay. So I thought that given the business that we are in, it would be really beneficial to understand, at least for myself, as much as I can about beliefs and why they are so hard to change. And so I started the research, and I thought I would share what I found. So I started with a definition, and I was digging through. So first we will talk about what beliefs are, why do we need them, how do we form them, and why are they so powerful? And all of that will, why they are so powerful, become very obvious throughout the presentation. So where I started was to look at different definitions, dictionaries, research papers, and I have to say there is very scant research on beliefs, which in the research literature in general, and you will find out by the end why that is so. So sources with a bent towards philosophy usually define beliefs as an attitude or a behavior, so something that you can observe from the outside. Psychologists tend to think of beliefs as a mental state or a mental model, so something that you have internally. But both cases, beliefs refer to something, accepting something or someone, their existence or the truth about them without actually having proof. And that's actually a key thing about beliefs. We do not need proofs for beliefs. Belief can also be a thing, such as political or religious beliefs. And very often a firmly held opinion is also thought of as a belief. So these are very kind of dry and a little bit sterile definitions. By the end of this presentation, we'll probably have something more user-friendly. So now on to why do we need beliefs? Well, there are 3 categories of reasons why we need them. One is on the level of our physical makeup and biology. The second is psychological and social. And I will start with the first reason, and it will gradually evolve into the psychological and social reasons. The very first reason for needing beliefs is that our brain has limited processing capacity. And just how limited, I want to show you some numbers. So the 7 sensory organs send 11 million bits of information every second to the brain for processing. To put it into something more manageable, it's 1.4 megabytes. So it's one of those olden, say, thumb drives level kind of amount of information, but it's per second, and it's only from the sensory organs. If you add to that whatever the brain needs to process to generate motion, add to that things that it communicates through hormones or the internal chatter of neurons in the brain, not to mention extrasensory perception, then you end up with a lot more information than 11 million bits per second. And that's lots. So I would like to know, can you guess what % of that information is processed by the conscious mind? Go ahead and type in a chat what you think. What % of that 11 million bits plus is processed by the conscious mind? Anyone guess? Okay, 5, 2, 1, 10. Okay. All right, thank you. Yes. Okay. So the closest are Ron and Jennifer. In fact, the conscious mind is able to process anywhere from 40 to 50, some people say maybe 100 bits per second, which is less than 1/10,000th of a % of the information that comes to our brain. Okay, so from this, it directly follows that the majority of processing that our brain does happens outside of conscious awareness, which I thought was really, really, really interesting. And for those of you on the visual side, this is what that looks like. So the white is the outside of conscious processing, and the red dots are whatever conscious processing can do. So that's one handicap. The second handicap that our brain has, that it's an energy hog. It uses a lot of information. Sorry, a lot of energy. And again, I would like you to guess what % of the body's energy supply does the brain use? Okay. Okay, so we have winner John and Carl. Brent and Carl are the winners. It's actually at rest, the brain uses 20% of the body's energy, which is and it is only 2% of our body weight. So it uses 10 times more energy than the rest of the body, and that's at rest. So imagine that when we are thinking, doing things, it uses a lot more. So from that, it directly follows that the brain needs to conserve somehow energy so that it wouldn't be at the detriment of the rest of the body, for example, are moving somewhere or moving out of harm's way. And to conserve energy, it needs to reduce processing. And all of that reduction in processing needs to happen in the subconscious or unconscious mind. And one way to reduce processing needs is to automate things. So most of our body's movements are automatic. You do not think about how you move a finger, right? That doesn't involve any thinking. You do not think about how you walk. When we learn how to ride a bike, we do think about it somewhat until it becomes completely automated. And the same is the case with driving a car. So that's about movement. But we do automated things with our thinking. And one trick that we employ is that we take shortcuts. So our brain is hardwired to use shortcuts. And one of those used most often is looking for patterns. In fact, our brain is a huge pattern recognition machine. So to really understand how this works, imagine for a second that Earth is uninhabited. It's pristine. You just arrived on your spaceship, you set yourself down and you look around and you want to see what's going on. So what you notice first is that there's a pattern of light and dark. So the sun comes up. So there's this, bright globe that we call the sun. It comes up, there is light for a while, then the sun goes down, there is dark for a while, and that whole thing repeats, right? So you discover the pattern of day and night. There's nobody to teach you that. You just observe that in your environment. If you put yourself down in a temperate climate, if you stay long enough, you will notice that there are changes to the vegetation. You notice the seasons. So there is growth, production, death, and there is rebirth in the spring, right? So you notice this cycle. And that gives you an idea about what happens where you are. In fact, when you accept that these cycles are true, these observed patterns are true, then at that moment they become beliefs. So there are 3 types of beliefs that we can talk about. They can be descriptive, which is when you describe that, well, there are the trees, they grow leaves in the spring, they bear fruit in the summer, leaves fall off in the fall, and they look dead in the winter, and there is snow falling in the winter. That's a descriptive belief. There is evaluative beliefs. You can evaluate the world around you using the belief. So for example, you can evaluate what it means for you that there is nothing on the trees in winter, that they look dead. Does it make you sad? Does it make you feel hopeless? Or does it make you totally joyful in the summer where the trees are full of fruits? Then imagine that you leave Earth for a few years and you come back and you hop in here at the middle of winter. And things look bleak. I mean, it's snowing, it's cold, everything looks dead. But because you have been here before, you know the pattern of the seasons, you can predict that there will be a spring and things will improve. So you will know it will help you survive the winter because you know that something else is coming afterwards, right? If you didn't know and that this pattern existed, you would arrive in winter and you would be like, oh God, this is like, I'm out of here, thank you. This is hopeless, right? So patterns help you survive and figure out how to orient yourself in your environment. Now, all of the beliefs that we talk about can be conscious. You can be aware of them or not. They can be subconscious. So to sum it up, beliefs enable us to understand the world, navigate through it. They guide action and they keep us safe. And they can keep us safe in the real jungle or in the urban jungle or in the social jungle. They also do other things, which I will talk about now. And that is, they enable us to learn, and they also define the self, which is one of their most important functions. So at the bottom of it, learning is a social experience. Even though we think of learning as taking a book and reading from it and absorbing information from there, or be it videos or whatever, most of our learning happens in a social setting, and we learn from others. And this enabled us to learn information that can be dangerous to learn firsthand. For example, you would learn from people around you not to stick your hand in a fire because that's not a very good idea. Or if you live in the tropics, you would learn from people around you that there are places on Earth where trees lose their leaves in the fall. You have no other way of ascertaining that if you live in the tropics. You have to believe those around you. The kicker is that we are hardwired to learn from those who are closest to us. And we are ready to believe more what those people tell us than be skeptical, which predisposes us to learn everything from the environment as we grow up. So our family of origin and people close to us when we are children have the most impact on how our belief systems will form. So there is a story of Pam that I would like to tell you, and just to demonstrate the power of social learning. So Pam is a little girl with a much older brother who is not very nice kid. So because Pam is so much younger and cannot keep up with the brother, he keeps calling her stupid and weak, and he keeps repeating that. And over time, Pam internalizes that because she feels it, right? The brother is much older. He has older friends. They are all boys. They are rambunctious. They know things that she doesn't. And because she's younger, she cannot even fathom how she would be able to do things that they do or know things that they know. So over time, she internalizes that, and she starts telling that to herself that, yes, I'm stupid and I'm weak. And that sort of reflects her approach to things. She evaluated her position. So we can say that whatever the brother says is her existential belief. Her evaluative belief is that, well, I'm not going to do well in school because I'm stupid and weak, so why even bother? And her predictive belief is that there's no point in going to university or anywhere, higher learning, because, you know, I'm stupid and weak. However, it does happen once in a while that as she leaves the family and she becomes on her own, she becomes employed somewhere where they recognize that she's actually very capable, she receives the right training and the right recognition. And over time, with repetition, this can change. Now we know that with AD, we can do this much faster, but typically that is a very good outcome. yet it requires a lot of time and a lot of repetition. And this already leads us to the topic of how do we form beliefs. So this was one story that suggested that, but I would like to start from the beginning. So we start learning about our environment as soon as we open our eyes. We start, if you watch babies, they bang things, they drop things. So they learn about noise, sound, making noises. They learn about gravity by dropping things. I think that's one of their favorites. So way before we develop language, we start learning. And here I would like to tell you another story. So imagine this is Bobby. He's, say, 15 months old. He doesn't have a very good command of language. In fact, he understands a little, speaks next to nothing. He, however, has a great zest for life, and he just loves being outside, exploring things, and jumping in mud puddles. Now, one day, Bobby's out doing his thing in the puddle, and imagine what kind of reaction a caregiver who is with him could have for him being totally muddy, dirty, wet, whatever else goes with puddle jumping. So the caregiver can have a horror reaction. It's like, oh my God, what is he doing again? He's going to get dirty. I have to do laundry again. He's just, he's such a bad boy, whatever. So even though this is not said, it is in the caregiver's body language, it is in the energy that the caregiver exudes. Bobby picks up on it. And so the belief that he starts to develop is that I'm not allowed to be myself, because when I'm myself, I'm not welcome to do what I want. I will be punished for having fun. I'm worth less than a round of laundry, which leads directly to the I'm worthless kind of beliefs, which we see quite a bit, right? So that's one possibility. And if the caregiver's response is the same over and over, this becomes a pattern that Bobby will internalize even before he could speak. And the opposite is equally true. So if the caregiver is happy-go-lucky, enjoys the fact that Bobby is enjoying himself, might want to join in even, there is not a problem about getting dirty. I mean, it's part of life and part of growing up to get dirty. In that case, Bobby will develop the belief that I'm allowed to be myself, I'm allowed to have fun, I'm accepted for who I am. So this is there to demonstrate that even pre-verbal kids absorb patterns from the people around them. And as we grow, so repetitive, emotionally charged, nonverbal messages become beliefs very soon, very quickly. So as we grow, parents talk to us as we begin to understand language. We begin to learn from our surroundings. We start to talk to each other, which is the story of Pam, where the brother was talking to her and telling her stuff. And then we enter some sort of a formal education system where we are bombarded with more patterns that we internalize. And by age 6 or 7, all of our core beliefs are established. And that is what we find, that the very foundations of what we know about the world and what we know about ourselves are pretty cemented by the age of 7. So until now, I talked about patterns, but single trauma also creates beliefs. And this is a true story of a friend of mine who at the age of 3 was put in a bumper car with her much older brother. And the older brother had a friend in the crowd, and the 2 boys were bumping the cars. I mean, it's a bumper car, right? That's what you do, you bump. And she was put in the lap of the brother, and she hit her nose on the steering wheel, which was not padded. She broke her nose, there was blood, crying, everything. And she completely forgot that memory. It was not a thing that she brought up. She didn't remember it as a trauma. But as an adult, she didn't like driving. She was very tense when she was driving, close to anxious. And it took actually quite a bit of digging with AD for this memory to surface. So a single event trauma can create a very, very strong, deep-seated belief that you would never know unless you search for it. So beliefs are very, very important for us to observe the world through. They are the filters, and whatever they filter through, we keep perceiving the same thing over and over, and we will see that pattern later on. And some of the beliefs that we have about ourselves and the world we share. Others are very unique. For example, my friend's experience with the bumper car and driving, that was very much her own belief. And what we think is true is only true for us, which is the story of Pam, where the fact that she thought that she was stupid and weak was only true for her. Other than the brother repeating, nobody else in her environment was giving her that message, but yet she internalized it. And that belief in turn created her own reality. And so at the bottom of it all, beliefs write our stories, and they determine who we think we are. So now let's look at a little bit more in an abstract way. This is what science, how science explains how beliefs form. So imagine that when a belief is beginning to form, it is a trigger. There is a trigger somewhere. The trigger can be a sensory perception. It can be an interaction with someone. You can find an idea in media or in book, or you can arrive at an idea through introspection, or it can be an observation through introspection. So when you notice this trigger, you start to search for meaning. You try to explain what that means to you. Really, the only thing that matters at that point is what it means to you. And as you are looking for an explanation, what the explanation that you find is influenced by the existing beliefs. So the search for explanation will generate several possibilities, and then you start to sort out which candidates of these explanation, or which new candidate beliefs are the most likely. And this process is biased by existing beliefs, your emotional state at that moment, your mood at the moment, your motivation about the topic where the trigger showed up, right? In the next step, after you evaluated the possible explanations and the new candidate beliefs, you accept one of these as your new truth about whatever it is that you were triggered by. And then once you accepted that belief, it actually immediately has an effect on what you do. And that in turn feeds back to everything else. So once you act on your new belief, it will influence what you perceive, what you look for, what you pay attention to. It will influence how you search for meaning and how you interpret the meaning of anything for yourself. And then it also influences which candidate beliefs will you consider as possibly true. So this is the development of one belief. What we have to consider, though, is that beliefs are not isolated. They don't stand alone. So if we consider that this belief that we just developed in the previous slide, it is not hanging out by itself. It's linked to other beliefs. And say that we have a belief that we developed, and over time, other beliefs start to link to it. So it will become over time more central. More beliefs will link to it, and then this web just grows. And this is how some beliefs will become very central. Science calls it, in psychology, they call it central beliefs. In AD, we call it core beliefs. So over time, the beliefs that were there first, and to which many other beliefs connect, become very relevant, and they kind of anchor the whole belief system. And this is how, because beliefs form a structure, it's a whole web, it's a system, not just isolated beliefs. This is why we can have core beliefs, which I marked with red, and many beliefs can have the same core belief underneath them. And there are beliefs, such as the one the yellow with the white rim, where one belief can have more than one core belief underneath it. Okay, so this actually is how it looks in research reality. So I took this image from an actual research paper where the researchers were mapping out political beliefs of students. And this is what they came up with for the population that they were looking at. So, and these are just the conscious beliefs. So these were political beliefs that the students could verbalize. So imagine the network that we have for beliefs that we cannot access consciously. So it's a fascinating web that we work with. And imagine that when we have such a complex web, how hard it is to dislodge something or change something. So it is really where the power of AD is coming in, that we can dig into. This is where digging is so important, to find those beliefs underneath of all the others. So showing how connected they are and how they develop, it becomes very clear that they are very hard to change, and really that's where their power comes from. The primacy effect is huge. It's the first come, first serve thing. Whatever belief, as you saw with the belief development, whatever was there first determines what comes later. So if you already develop the belief structure, it will determine what beliefs are allowed to form later. The closest analogy in real life I could come up with is, imagine that you enter a new workplace where there are, say, 100 people working. They already have an established culture. They know how to communicate with each other. They have their habits, their coffee time. They know what they do. And whether or not you will be accepted into that work culture depends on how well you fit in with them. If you are very different, no matter how good you are at the job you do, no matter what value you bring to the company, if you do not mesh with the culture, sooner or later you will be rejected. And that's exactly what happens to beliefs. So even though people are often presented with facts, with well-established, scientifically supported truths and evidence, they will not change their beliefs because the belief structure is so stable and so strong. And the reason for that is that we actually are wired to do quite a bit of mental gymnastics to hold our biases and keep our existing beliefs the way they are. It actually serves us. And in the next slides, you will see why that is. Another reason why beliefs are so powerful is because often we have emotional charge attached to them. So the more emotion we have associated with a belief, the harder it will be to change it. And finally, beliefs influence behaviors, and in turn, behaviors influence beliefs. So we will do behaviors that reinforce the beliefs that we already have. So this all looks not very positive for beliefs. It's like, why really? Why are they so rigid? But this actually serves a very, very important purpose. And belief systems are the scaffolding that determines who we are, how we relate to the world, and it enables us to function in this world that is constantly changing. So imagine if we didn't have these firm belief systems about everything, and we would process every incoming input all the time. we would be, first of all, overwhelmed with the too much information. Second, we wouldn't have a solid core of who we are as an individual in this physical body. We would just flip-flop from one thing to another. There would be no guiding principles in our lives, no structure really around which we can organize our life. Beliefs are also necessary, but they tell us who we are. And they are also necessary for social cohesion. We are social creatures, we live in groups, and beliefs that allow us to be part of a social group. We share beliefs with the people that we are surrounded with. And that in fact keeps structure and order in those social groups. And as you see, even though beliefs are really, really hard to change, they are very much necessary, and very much it needs to be that way for us to function as humans. So in the end, the more user-friendly definitions for beliefs are that they are filters through which we perceive the world, both the internal and the external, and that they are guiding principles in life that provide direction and meaning. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Comments,
Wow.
questions, feedback, please.
That was great. I love the graphics.
Yeah, great job with the visuals. I love how it looks like you're a small person walking around in a room full of like giant logos and things, right?
Yeah.
Very cool effect.
Oh, stop sharing that. There we go.
And I love how you know how to think clearly on these things, which is great. That's Melinda has that rare ability that I got really spoiled by at MIT, because if you survive there, everyone can think clearly, or you don't make it past your first year. But it reminds me of that, very clear, logical. You always know right where you're going. So
yeah,
I loved it. And I also love that it's not just a reiteration of my material. As much as I like my material, it's boring for me to hear people teach it, right? It's nothing personal. We're all bored by things we already know. But yes, comments, feedback from Melissa, and then we'll get into open discussion.
Brent, I had sent you a question about the beliefs, integrating them into, is there, I know one time when you worked on me with Sheila Cares About Sheila, you started to say something about, now you realize this takes time to integrate into your nervous system. If you could talk more about that.
Sure. There's not one interval of time. It depends on what you're doing. So as an example, I know that Terry O'Connell would often say it usually takes most people at least 3 days, often 7, to integrate a digging session. And I think those numbers line up with the healing crisis numbers. You know, that might be an interesting topic for someone wanted to take point for a future Monday without Steve. Steve's not here, right? Just making sure. But so what Carl used to say is that it generally would take about 3 weeks to process a skating or a slackline session, and 3 years for the intensive life training. And what I have found is, for most people, it will take at least 3 weeks to integrate the level 4 into your nervous system. And the awakening intensive, you are probably looking at about a 3-year cycle. That you do the work for a year, you don't stop getting benefits the day you stop the work, right? When you stop the work, you'll stop your future benefits, but it keeps rolling for a while. That's normal. It's kind of like an MLM. Anyone done MLMs out selling someone else's product, right? Yeah. They get you on board with all this nonsense about, oh, passive income, blah, 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 right? Brent's experience, the instant I stopped running around selling this stuff and supporting people constantly, my income immediately started to decline. Immediately, like a minute later, right? So I would say probably for a simple change, a few days. But again, I think it'd be fascinating to understand, why is it that healing crises tend to happen 3, 7, 14, 21? I don't know. I don't even have a good theory. But that seems to line up with the common processing times. I don't think that's a coincidence. So, you know, for most stuff, days, maybe a few weeks. For the really big ones, a few years. And, you know, a lot of the time it's obvious. It's like, how long does it take to get driving into your nervous system? Well, you'll know because you're driving a car and you're comfortable and you're not constantly worrying about it, right? One of my favorite examples is this. Raise your hand if you remember the first time you tried to make a left turn across traffic when you were driving. The very first time. I remember it. I remember it because I think my father was more angry with me then than at any other moment of his life. Even when he had to drive for 2 hours in the middle of the night to bail me out of jail. He was angry, but I think he was more angry then. Why? There's a lot involved in making a left turn. There really is. You got to watch the cross traffic. You got to watch the pedestrians. You got to put on your turn signal, right? You got to take the car out of gear. You got to keep the clutch in. You got to keep your eye on everything, right? Then there's a clearing. You got to get in gear, turn the hands, get across, don't run in over pedestrians, right? It's not easy. There's a whole bunch of things. But when was the last time any of you really thought hard about it when you made a left turn? It's probably been a while, right? You just know your body. So that's what I say, it's obvious. Does that help, Sheila? You know, you'll know. How do you know you've integrated surfing into your nervous system? You're standing on the board on the wave, right? You didn't wipe out again. Good for you, right? Anyone know how many good rides I got surfing before I wiped out and had a bad injury? Good being relative, exactly one. Yeah. I was so excited. First day of summer vacation, went out. I'm like, oh my God, I stood up for a little bit on the board. And I was so excited and I went right back out, and the next wave, boom, serious injury. No more surfing for Brent. But great discussion. And, you know, the discussions are also, I think, a great way to come up with future topics. And, you know, again, this is not designed just to be Brent yakking at you guys. We already got a bunch of events that's that, right? I want to create a community. I love Melinda's presentation. Who would like to have Melinda back to do more? Yep. And Melinda, next time, we're going to double your salary, but we're also going to double the price. Fair enough?
Yeah. Okay.
And
So
if it goes really
time,
well, we'll triple it for the third one.
Okay. So my next topic will be the biology and neuroscience of belief.
Awesome. Very cool. I assume you've read Bruce Lipton's work?
Oh yeah, but there's more.
Duh,
more,
right.
More
That's the obvious, the
yeah,
obvious
okay.
duh moment is because he wrote a book called The Biology of Belief, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which is very interesting. And another good one, again, great topic if someone wants to run with it. Grant McFederage's work on the way that humans develop. Basically, Bruce Lipton kind of figured out that the cells are getting their information from somewhere. That the intelligence is in the cell wall, and the cell is receiving signals that tell it what to do. But he wasn't exactly sure how that worked. It seems that Grant McFederage put in the next piece of that puzzle, where that signal comes from. And really, it comes down to that one of the earliest divergences in life on Earth was single cell versus multi-cell. Huge, huge. That was a game changer. And it all goes back to that moment when we became multi-celled, what, 4 billion years ago, roughly? Anyone know exactly when we multi-celled life arised on Earth? I think it was in the first billion years. It didn't take long. I could be wrong. Some of you guys may know better. But yeah, I loved how also you brought your own stuff into it, your own opinion, which was great. And, you know, you have a talent for the visuals, in case you didn't know.
Yeah, I know. I love.
Yeah.
I love doing the graphics.
No, they looked like they were well done. That someone took some care and knew what they were doing. Yeah.
And I think that I try to engage the different learning styles as much as possible.
Awesome.
Some people do fine just by listening. Other people prefer to see.
Yep.
Talking and seeing, I think, is the most effective.
Yeah,
So
try to hit all of them.
that's my
right? Show it, say it, demonstrate it, have people do it.
Exactly. So that's my go-to from my teaching times.
Yep.
And I'm really happy that I figured out this trick with Zoom, that I could be the bobblehead and slides.
Yeah, they had that on. They've had that on Webinar Jam forever.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they finally did it in Zoom.
Yeah, so it really works for me. because I'm not totally disappearing, which is
Yeah,
really,
yeah. I think it's great.
Yeah.
That's why I loved it at the end of the webinar doing the Q&A. I can put my talking head there so people know Brent is actually there answering questions, right? But I want to leave the slide up with the information on it.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing useful about looking at Brent, not really, right? No URL, no scan code, nothing.
Yeah. So, anybody questions, comments?
Yeah, questions, comments?
The only question or comment or both is you say you did a really good explanation of why we have beliefs and why they're needed. But the next logical thing that came up to me is, you know, what's the ramifications of changing a belief? You know, like we all do this, it's all what we're doing, we're changing a belief, but what is the ramifications and how much care do you have to put into changing it and that kind of thing? And is that why when you try and change a belief, sometimes it doesn't stick or comes back or that kind of thing? So that's just it's the next logical, like I'm waiting for, like, wait, you're ending it here, what about the whole next section that you're not talking about?
I was not analyzing AD processes, but yes, we have to be really careful. And as I know from some of the stories that I told people, you can overdo it at times. So we have to be really mindful of who we work with, how much experience they had in belief work, how mature they are psychologically. For example, I'm working with a friend who has done many different modalities as a school psychologist. And with every modality that she learned, she did a lot of introspection, a lot of work on herself. So for her, I move her energy in AD like there's no tomorrow, yet she has a huge basement, right? She has a lot of foundational beliefs that need to change, but she's quick at it because she has done already a lot of work. But if you meet somebody like that, who hasn't done any work on themselves in the past, that can be really tricky. And you have to be really careful not to go faster than what your client would want to.
Now imagine a really out of shape person walking into CrossFit.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of what we're dealing with here. We know we can help them. You just be a little careful because you could shock the system, scare them off, cause injury if you're not.
Well, I think it's really important too to work with beliefs that are not serving them. You know, that's important. And sometimes you really have to dig to find, you know, some of those beliefs, but we need to change the beliefs first that aren't serving the person.
But Terry, somebody may think that belief is serving them, even though you may not think it's serving them. So what do you do then?
Well, like Melinda's friend who didn't know she had broken her nose at a young age. That was a belief that wasn't serving her. That was something that, you know, you can work on.
Yeah, and again, it's a belief what serves someone or doesn't, right? There could be beliefs that people believe serve them, and in the end, it's to their detriment. But at that point, they are not ready to let go.
Yeah, the way I would put it is this: that the beliefs are all, in theory, malleable and changeable.
Yes.
But a big constraint we have is we can only change our beliefs within the framework of our existing beliefs.
Exactly.
So it's a bit of a catch-22, right? It's a bit of a bootstrap.
And very often what I find is that I need to loosen up beliefs around the core belief, and then it's easier to move it. So it's kind of, you need to do a detective work on nearby concepts, nearby things, and then the whole belief structure becomes a little bit more malleable, more open to.
That's what we call meta healing or meta theta.
Yeah.
Because you guys know the first system I practiced was called healing, where is a 5-letter word that starts with TH and ends in ETA, right? So the beliefs about your beliefs, that's what meta healing is.
Yeah.
Really important stuff. Like if you guys haven't done a chunk of meta healing, like go run and do that right now. Like before you have lunch or use the restroom, just go, right? This is really important.
Well,
why?
Essentially, yeah.
Again, you can only change your beliefs according to your existing beliefs.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, very much like code. You can't change this because this is holding it and this is holding it, right? So you gotta you know, or very, again, it's all the same dynamics, trying to fix a body orthopedically after an injury. Right?
Yeah.
That if you have only one injury, rehab is easy. Any moron can do it. Easy. Right? You have a healthy young athlete with one problem, look in the book, follow the instructions done. What gets tricky is you have someone with 3 or 4 or 5 problems. And the way you solve the first one is contraindicated by the third and fourth one, right? That's when you need someone who really knows what they're doing. And so the beliefs are all locked up in all these different ways, and it looks like you can't move. Or a rat's nest. Anyone ever had to clear a rat's nest like behind your stereo? It's like you can do it, but you can't just pull a cable out because they're all twisted together and stuck to each other, right? The beliefs are just that.
Yeah.
So in theory, we could dissolve our beliefs about gravity and float around. I just haven't seen that with my own eyes because it's really tricky to get at those beliefs. That's all. That's how I see it. So anything is possible, but we're limited in practice by where we're at and the resources we have, right? Just like in theory, I could jump up and do a 360 dunk. The only thing holding me back is I can't jump, right? I got like a 2-inch vertical, being a 50-some-year-old white man who couldn't jump more than 2 inches when he was 16, right? Yeah. So it looks easy. It's understandable. You can imagine it in your mind very quickly, but it's not there. It's interesting. I'll just share with you guys an interesting discussion I had with one of my most advanced clients and students recently. she was like, "Oh my God, Brent, you know, my business is doing great, but I'm so busy. This is miserable." And I had to laugh because I'm like, right. When I tell you that movement will triple your income, I'm not saying that everything in your life will be exactly the same, except you'll have more money. That's what we all tend to think, right? No, that's rarely how it works. You will have more responsibility, more pressure, more stress, higher stakes. That's what happens when you make more money, right? You may have to, you know, for me to accommodate to that higher level of income, I had to hire a full-time assistant, which I never had to do before. So you get a bigger monthly nut. Again, more stress, more responsibility, more things that could go wrong. And you have to work through it. And then your time thermostat will return you back to where you're at, just like the money thermostat does, right? And both times I had a big jump in my income. The 2 biggest ones were actually 3 times that I got crazy busy. Once was when I first got on the radio on the Aware Show. It really launched my professional business. I mean, I had opened it a year and a half before, but it's the first time people were actually coming to me and having sessions and giving me money, right? I was crazy busy for a while. Insane. I didn't care because I was coming off of years of disability thinking I'd never work again, right? Just like when I had that first session with Terry, I was sick as a dog with a healing crisis. Oh my God. I think the only times in my life I've been more sick it was when I ended up in the hospital. It was really bad, but I didn't care because I got a miracle, right? I'm like, I can handle this. So what happens is when you do the movement, you can absolutely triple your income or more. It's just not as simple as my life is exactly as it is now, but there's more money, right? I mean, it might be. Just like when I started working with dating coaches. I had come off divorce from my first marriage, I had one good relationship that blew up the day I was going to propose to her. My father died and then she dumped me and it was just this whole mess, right? And when I started working the second time was when I had my first session with Carl. It was day after bankruptcy. That's no joke. That really happened that way. That was probably the busiest time in my life, the next 3 weeks. I remember telling people I didn't have time to use the toilet and eat dinner. I had to do it at the same time. I was really that busy, right? Sleeping 4 or 5, 6 hours a night, you know, scheduling people whenever I could, right? Because I was so desperate for business. But it was a hugely stressful thing. And I had to come off of that. And then you hit the new plateau. Does that make sense? So beliefs are no different, right? You can make big changes in your life. Just be careful with the expectation that that's the only thing that's going to change. Because when I started with the dating coach, well, actually, I started by taking Pickup 101, believe it or not. And they charged me $2,000 to basically just give me, you know, basics on how to approach women for dates. And I really thought, just give me some new clothes and a good pickup line and aim me at the right bar and I'm set. No. That's why I say, it's not like your life is the same, except now you're getting dates. It's not that simple. You got to change your energy, be more social, be more confident, right? Take care of yourself, all these things involved. So that I look, how long was it until I had a girlfriend? Almost 3 years. I had women I dated a few times, but no girlfriend for 3 years. Why? I had to become a different person. I'm not saying you have to do this. I learned to ride a motorcycle. I got a motorcycle, learned to ride. I got new clothes. I painted my house, all these things. So then you're that new person that's ready for that thing you want. That's usually how it goes. And one of the most difficult things in this work is people that refuse to examine their beliefs. I'd say that's even worse than know-it-all. Might be the only one that's worse than know-it-all. Is people that go, don't you dare challenge my belief. I just believe that Jesus is Lord and nothing's ever going to change that, right? It's just, you can't work with that. Just like it was a red flag once. I had a publicist, she ripped me off. I sued her, it was a whole nightmare. I should have been tipped off. The first time I met, she had been talking to someone else at some mixer talking about legalizing marijuana. And she was like, no, I think it should be illegal. Why? I don't know. I just feel that way strongly. It's like, okay, that's not good, right? Right. It's great to have beliefs. Better to have, one thing you guys will hear me say a lot is, I don't care as much what you believe as I'm more interested why you come to that conclusion, why you've chosen to believe that. That's more useful. It'd be kind of like going out to try to get dates. It's, you'll learn more about someone not from what they're wearing, but why they chose to wear that. That makes sense? So a lot of value there.
Brent, I'm wondering from Melinda. Melinda, could you give us an example, maybe learning to drive a car, how a person can use belief work so that the person learning learns it faster?
I think that's pretty easy. Go for it, Melinda.
I would
If you
say
need my help, feel free to pass, but I think it's an easy one. Go crazy.
I think I would first dig around whether or not they have any beliefs about them not being able to learn how to drive. That's where I would start.
Oh,
Yep.
and maybe I could clarify. I'm wondering about that step-by-step model of applying that and using it awakening dynamics wise.
With that, the truth is that learning how to drive is a different function than a believing that your hair is purple and that's the way it should be. So the way the body learns automated movement has its own process. So the way you automate things like learning how to ride a bike, for example, it's a unique function. It's a different function of the body, a brain and body interaction.
I'll give you a little more detail for the example. Like me, I was so sure I was going to end up killing somebody. Do not teach me how to drive. I will not be able to learn, and I'm going to kill somebody. Like to help someone with that sort of belief system.
That you start digging as to why do you believe that? Definitely. The mechanics of driving, of changing gears, of using the pedals, whatever, that is mechanical. There is not a lot of AD you can do.
There's some. I'll argue that
much.
there's some. I would start with what I think is the obvious stuff. I know how to drive a car. I know what it feels like.
Yeah.
I know how to drive a car safely. I know what it feels like.
Yeah. Establish things, but in terms of learning the mechanics, that's not it.
Right. The belief work is not a substitute for a teacher in a car.
Yeah.
But I think it will tend to grease the wheels a little bit. Haha.
Yeah. Yeah.
It should be a little easier. Like Sheila, if you wanted to learn German. Well, I would say, first thing you do some downloads around it. I know how to speak German. I know what it feels like. It's easy to learn to speak German, blah, 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 right? Whatever it is. So I think there's probably 10, 20 minutes of obvious downloads. Then that is not going to teach you German on its own. At least I've never heard of that. What it tends to do is once you have the energy right, then you'll tend to more easily find the right book, the right software, the right German friend or whatever. That will tend to work for you to bring you to your goal. So you're
What,
facilitating. You can't, the belief work won't replace practice and repetition, but it will perhaps make that practice and repetition a little more effective, a little
yeah,
more
that's what I'm looking at,
powerful, a
right?
little more
Yeah.
impactful. But yeah, for something like you said, I'm afraid I'm going to kill someone, I'd say that's just a straight ahead dig.
Yeah.
I'd start with, what's the worst thing about if you killed someone? And that's a question nobody asked, and it will mess with you. I had a good friend of mine I used to play D&D with. He was a truck driver. And one time he was drinking and driving, and he stopped too slowly, hit a car and killed a man. And he was, I don't want to gossip too much. Let me just say it was still affecting him years and decades later. This person was not a psychopath. They was just like, oh, I killed someone, too bad for them, right? So there's most likely some kind of past life genetic memory. That's why you're so terrified of it. That it happened to you or someone you knew, right? Good news is, Terry used to say that the ways of dying that scare the hell out of you are generally not the ones you're going to get this time. Why? The death loves variety, especially at its death experience. Us dying the same way every time would be like eating the exact same meal for every time you eat for the rest of your life. You could do it, but like, why would you do that? No one would do that, right? Of course. So the one that gets you is usually the one you're not afraid of, because the ones you're afraid of, you're connected to from your past life memories and so on, right? So, but yeah, definitely I would do at least a few downloads. Doing that 10 minutes of obvious downloads, sitting at Dave & Buster's waiting for my beer and my hamburger is how I busted through my old Pac-Man limitation. That back in the old days, I never scored more than I think 225,000. And when Dave & Buster's opened in Westchester, it took me about 2 weeks to get right back to where I was when I was 12. I could score about 200,000 on most games. That's it. And then I just did some belief work in the thing at Dave & Buster's. And I hopped on my phone and downloaded a new pattern, literally, right? Because I realized I was limited because I was using my old childhood patterns. I mean, such a great lesson there, right? Literally my old childhood Pac-Man patterns. I just had to let those go, download, learn a new pattern, and it worked.
Yeah.
And within 3 weeks, 1.2 million on one credit. And after that, they moved the stools and moved the Pac-Man machine, and no one can ever touch that record. Unless like you have an adult diaper on or something, right? But yeah, hope that helps, Sheila.
Yeah, there's another thing that if you, if somebody is to learn as an adult and is really anxious about learning the mechanics of it, then visualization is what helps the most.
Yep.
Just imagining that you are driving, that you're doing the things.
Yep.
Even if you're not totally fluent at them yet, with visualizing, you will be.
And I mean, athletes learned this decades ago.
Exactly.
There is only so much you can train your body, right? So if you're a basketball player, there's only so many physical free throws you can shoot. At some point, you start wearing things out. So what do you do the rest of the hours of the day? You visualize. It's that simple, right? Actually shooting free throws will always be better, but sometimes it's not an option. Either your body's worn out or you're on an airplane or whatever. And they found visualizing, imagining your sport works almost as well as actually doing it. So there you go.
And
So,
maybe if a person has real fear of driving, after doing the AD digging and downloading and whatnot, visualize until the person feels comfortable in the visualization. Because if you are afraid, right, you can't even visualize. No matter what you do, you will have that pit at the bottom of your stomach. It's like, oh my God, what am I gonna do? Right? So that's kind of, if you can visualize it with comfort, then and ease, then it's time to get into the car.
Yep.
That sounds like a snapshot could be used. Have them
Yes.
visualize.
Yes.
Yeah,
the word
that'd be a
Yes.
great chance. Yeah, great place to snapshot. Perfect.
Yes, I would say so. Yes.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. We're about 2 o'clock. I'm happy to stay on a little longer if you guys have questions or discussions. I did want to throw out there that just the upcoming schedule. Let's see, next week, me and Nick are going to be hosting, and we're going to try something he's wanted to do, which I think will be cool. He's putting together some movement videos of YouTubers. Now, obviously, they're not going to be shaking their hands or doing what we want, but he's going to pull a couple of videos, and we're going to watch the videos and read the energy and learn a little bit about these people, which I think will be a great exercise for you. It is a little harder when someone's not doing a shaking scooping because it's not as obvious, but that's the skill you're going to need at some point in your life, right? If you're going in for a job interview, don't you want to be able to read the energy of the person hiring you? Of course you do, right? They're probably not going to shake their hands for you. Exactly. Now, if you're the person doing the interview, maybe you can get away with that, or maybe not. If you're working for like a big company, probably not. So it's about learning to read energy, even if we don't have a big formal movement to exaggerate. So I think it'll be cool. After that, we're planning to be off May 1st. After that, we have Melinda with the biology and neuroscience of belief. And then Tara with, that's on the 8th. Tara with energy practitioner self-care on the 15th.
Yeah,
And
we might change that, Brent. So
okay,
that
yeah, that's fine.
might change that. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys can flip it around. I don't care.
Yeah.
And then after that, I'm designing one on enlightening the shadow, on how we relate and start integrating the shadow into ourselves in day-to-day life. I'll warn you, it's high level, right? Not for beginners. If you're afraid of the darkness, please skip that day, right? Right. If you freak out when the lights go off, you can skip that one. So that's and then we have some others later in the summer. I wanted to ask you guys, my tentative plan was to stick with Mondays this month and go to Thursdays at the same time in May. So that's what I'd like to do. First, I want to check with the presenters because I see Melinda and I saw Tara earlier. I don't know if she's still with us.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay. Are you okay with doing Thursday the 18th?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome.
No, she's good on the 11th. She would go the 11th and I would go the 18th.
Okay, so
Right,
she's
yes,
going to
yes.
go on the 11th. Okay, so that'll be Thursday, May 11th.
Yes.
And that will be energy practitioner self-care, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. All right. And so Melinda, you will be Thursday, May 18th.
Yep.
With the biology of neuroscience and belief. And then I will be on Thursday, May 25th with enlightening the shadow. So I didn't intentionally plan that, but 3 on, 1 off might be what we end up with. We'll see how it goes. So everyone cool with that? We'll do Thursdays in May. If there's some big disaster we didn't think about, we'll change it back in June. But I think it'd be nice since we already have Monday, Tuesday events every week. Let's do a Thursday one too. We'll stay in touch on the back half of the week. And if any of you guys want to present on a topic, let me know. I guess there's 2 good ways to go. One is if you're already an expert on something, please share. Right? Maybe you're an expert on the Kabbalah or an expert on the toning bowls or whatever, right? We'd love to hear. The other is if you're not an expert, that's great too. Pick a topic you're interested in and go learn about it. How do you guys think I created 40 masterclasses in the VIP club? You think I already knew every bit of detail ahead of time? No. I went out, I read books, I visited websites, right? Rented movies. That's how you do it. There's no secret. Like Thomas Edison said, 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. And if there's something you want to get better at, committing yourself to teaching is a great way. You'll be amazed at how much you learn. And I'll even pay you the same amount I pay myself and Melissa. Oh, I'm sorry, Melinda, Melissa. Can't speak. Fair enough, right? Yep. Last questions or shares? Go for it. Any last words, Melinda?
No, thanks for showing up.
Yeah.
And I hope that it was useful.
Awesome. Well, we'll see you guys next week. Until then, goodbye. Take care and namaste. Good afternoon, morning, evening, whatever time it is or in your time zone. See you guys.